Good evening and welcome to the agenda. I am Ajay Kaul. In this program today, we will be talking about the breakthrough achieved between India and China at the line of actual control as troops from both sides have started going back. After 2 months of face-off on the line of actual control, India and China have moved back troops by over 1.5 kilometers each in the Galwan Valley in Ladakh. Now there are expectations of similar actions on the other points of face-off. Are these signs of tensions reducing? Can we trust China? In the agenda today, we will seek answers to such questions from Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vora, a former diplomat and expert on international relations. But before we welcome Dr. Vora, have a look at this brief report.
India remains cautious as withdrawal by China's People Liberation Army at 4 locations in eastern Ladakh, Galwan Valley and Pangong Lake continues. PLA has started troops withdrawal from the standoff sites at 3 locations in the Galwan Valley and is in the process of dismantling some structures on Finger 4. One of the 8 cliffs jutting out of the SITI range that overlook the Pangong Lake. PLA had been at a disadvantage in Galwan, Gogra and Hot Spring in terms of their military positions. In Pangong Tso, however, the situation favored the Chinese since they had built a road up to Finger 4. The disengagement is likely to be gradual and calibrated process by both sides, with each point being negotiated by the military commanders on the ground. China was the first to start thinning its troops at the site of June 15 bloody clash that killed soldiers on both sides. Local army commanders quickly relayed the information to their superiors once they were able to establish a trend. Indian Army Chief General M.M. Narvane informed Defence Minister Rajnath Singh about the development. Soon, diplomats from the two countries touched base and in a couple of hours, they had fixed a quick video conference between National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The conversation went on for about 2 hours. There were disagreements on who was to blame for the standoff and the June 15th violence, but they had arrived at the agreement on many points. Doval told Wang that Beijing would need to restore the patrolling rights of the Indian Army on these 4 points to ensure peace and tranquility along the 1597-kilometer line of actual control. Analysts insist that the litmus test of the success of Doval-Wang conversation would be the restoration of the Indian patrolling rights on the north bank of the Pangong Lake. Indian officials said the military build-up in the depth areas on both sides of the LAC would continue till the situations at the standoff point did not settle down. India had mobilized thousands of soldiers, fighter jets, attack helicopters, tanks and artillery guns to respond to the Chinese mobilization. It was during the disengagement process that violence broke out on 15th June, the worst clash between soldiers of the two countries in 45 years. As India and China remained locked in a standoff in eastern Ladakh, the government fielded a number of calls and conversations from different countries offering support. And this helped the Modi government put forward its perspective on the confrontation in the high Himalayas. In a bid to isolate China, during standoff at LAC, Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar spoke to counterparts from the US, the UK, France, Germany, Indonesia, Australia, Canada and Japan, among others, delivering what the government believes are reasonable results. Diplomatic sources said there was intense curiosity among countries about the India-China clash, the causes and how India planned to deal with it. Government sources said that they believe PM Narendra Modi's visit to Ladakh amplified the Indian resolve on standing up to Chinese aggression. India's job was also made easier by the general sense of aggression shown by China with all its neighbors, both on land and on the seas. While this was happening, India and China were also engaged in serious discussions at military and diplomatic level to disengage at the LAC in Ladakh. Bureau Report.
So let's welcome Dr. Vora. Welcome to the program, sir.
Much, very kind of you. And you said I'm an international expert, Mr. Kaul. Your expertise is greater than mine. You are really an expert with a profound
It's always a
understanding.
pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So now you're seen reports about India and China moving back troops and trying to disengage. So do you think this is de-escalation of tensions?
You could use any terminology. You could call it disengagement, you could call it de escalation, you could call it rationalization, you could call it adjustment. The reality is, it is a withdrawal by China. They have egg all over their face. So, if you give me a few minutes to explain to you why I say that, would you permit me? Do I have the time? Okay, I can't hear you, but I guess you've said yes. All right. Now, what I really want to highlight is something that Victor Hugo, the French writer, had said a long time ago, that no power on earth can stop an idea it has. Why do I say this? Because today the convergence of national and international forces is so entirely in favor of India that China is isolated. So, what defines a nation power or a nation to a crisis situation? Four things. One is political consensus that is revealed in decisive leadership, which means that whoever is the leader of the country is not constantly looking over his shoulder and worried about what's going to happen to the other parties, etc. Second is economic strength. Third is your military power. And fourth is national unity. I take you back, sir, to the Vietnam War. America was not defeated by Vietnam in the Vietnam War. America was defeated by America because there was no national consensus. All kinds of opposition to what they were doing. So let me begin the story of India and China. And the answer to your question, can China be trusted, is a resounding no, no, not at all. So let me take you back to the beginning of this year when the Chinese virus attacked the rest of the world, when it was unleashed. Many of us thought that, like the West floundered, some good, quote-unquote, friends of India paid for by the Chinese, if I may use the term, sir, the chamchas of the Chinese, their paid agents, felt that India too would flounder. We did not, sir. Over 100 countries rushed to the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, for assistance. We did not. Instead, we helped 130 countries. We sent medicines, whatever. A person like Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, like him, hate him, be indifferent, he says, we shall never forget India's help. India has been great. The third thing that we did, sir, was the Vande Bharat exercise. When Mother India reached out to over 500,000 of her children in distress in 140 countries and brought them back, when your pilots are overflying Pakistan, the Pakistani ATC says, we are proud of you. I mention all this because it's an indication of your growing self-confidence. Now, as far as China is concerned, when they tried this business in Ladakh, and I know that there's something been special advisor to the Autonomous Hill Development Council in Kargil, and I know exactly what we are talking about. Now, they felt that when India was distracted by the coronavirus, by the Chinese virus, this was a good time to move in. The people talk of China's salami slicing, whatever it's called, I don't know what that means, but ours is pretty clear that when someone troubles us, we use a hammer, we call it head smashing. What really happened then? The feeling in China, and I believe they grossly miscalculated, was that India would make a perfunctory noise and then they would withdraw. We did not. That was the first thing. Now I take you, sir, to the last week of May, when the 13th National People's Congress, a kind of parliament of the Communist Party of China, was held. Not enough attention has been given to Prime Minister Li Keqiang's speech. There were three wonderful things he said, which I, as a professional diplomat, I observed, sir. The first thing he said, that we have to strengthen the loyalty of the army. We have to strengthen the loyalty of the army. This basically means that the army is not sufficiently loyal. They call it the People's Liberation Army. I prefer to call it the People's Suppression Army. The second thing he said, that the virus has severely damaged China's economy. And we will have to work very hard. We'll have to reduce our budget. We'll have to reduce our spending, including on the much publicized Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, the CPC, and all that nonsense that people talk about. This is the second thing that he said. And the third thing, which I believe was very, very significant,
that he talked about in his speech. And it's on the net. People can go and remove it, read it. It's no longer available on Chinese website. And he said that China now has to pull up its socks to re-examine its position in the world. This is what he was saying in the last week of May, because he knew by then China was beginning to be humiliated. China was beginning to be brought to book, held to account by the rest of the world. And he also said something, to answer your question, can China be trusted? I'm talking about the last week of May. He said, Hong Kong and Macau, we promise you that you will continue to enjoy the maximum amount of autonomy and do what you want. And what happened a month later, sir?
But Dr. Vora, you will appreciate that China is known for deception. They say one thing and do another thing, something else.
So your question, can China be trusted? The answer is absolutely not.
So their prime minister may be saying something, but it may be like to mislead the world.
It is absolutely, everything they say is meant to mislead the world. You know, they talk about a character called Sun Tzu and his art of war, and they say if you can win a battle without firing a shot, the only way you can do it is through psychological dominance.
Yes.
I repeat once again, sir, that many of their chumpchas, oh mighty China, oh militarily very powerful China, etc., how can India take them on? I'll tell you, sir. Sir, there is a thing called the Global Firepower Index. They assess the strengths of national military. Number one, United States, no question. In terms of training, manpower, equipment, super. Number two, they rank Russia. Number three, pretty much close to each other is China and India. Now, China last fought a war, sir, in 41 years ago with Vietnam when they got smashed. Ultimately, a military has to have the expertise and the experience. The people
working experience, I will say.
Absolutely. Fighting experience,
working
You're
experience.
absolutely... You're putting it more politely, sir. I was a little more blunt, because that's why I said you're a better diplomat than I am. But here what we see is 41 years ago, and the people who then fought are now all in their 60s, they are retired. I last fought in 21 years ago in Kargil,
yes.
and those young officers, lieutenants, captains, majors, they are now full colonels and brigadiers. They know what mountain warfare is all about. We have that advantage.
Why only Kargil, sir? We actually fight war every day on the LOC.
You fight a war every day on the LOC. You fight war. You know, you deal with terrorism now much less ever since we
terrorism and with the cover fire from the Pakistani army. We fight war.
You are absolutely. So therefore, we have a military, as an American leader had once said, I think this was about 10 years ago, that let's be very close to India. It's a military that actually fights. Not just put on those beautiful uniforms with ribbons and medals and strut around. It's a military
that is why I said working experience. India has more working experience.
So therefore, those who think that we can't face the Chinese, let me assure you, sir, that if they try anything, they would have been pushed back. Now, why did the Chinese withdraw? Number one, they have realized that we have called their bluff. You know, on the land border with India.
So sir, I'll intercept.
Sorry,
you are again and again saying that Chinese withdrew. Now there is a question mark on whether they came in, whether they transgressed.
Let us say there was a certain area that neither side was supposed to be in. They have come into that area. The same thing happened in Kargil. You know, we used to be on our post, we'd withdraw in winter, and nobody would go up. That was the convention. But the Pakistanis, who had been well trained in deception by their Chinese gurus, their Chinese masters, their Chinese karta dhartas, they tried the same thing with us, and then you know the result. Now, sir, the Prime Minister's office has clarified his remarks. The opposition parties are screaming about it, that it was an area where nobody was supposed to be. And then when you come in and on that side of the Galwan river, you put up structures, as we call them, tents or whatever, it was not meant to be done. There is a convention, there is a protocol that has to be followed. They violated that. The assumption there was that India was so occupied with its internal difficulty, with internal challenges, that they would not pay attention to this. They were amazed at the response that we gave. You know, 20 of our boys died, sir. You know that as well as I do. How many Chinese died? They don't talk about it. I think for decades to come, sir, we will celebrate this particular day in June as Galwan Day. I mean, we'll dedicate it to those 20 braves who laid down their lives.
We should not maybe...
Sir, let me complete. What will China celebrate? Withdrawal Day?
No, no.
Humiliation day?
No, my point is, yeah, my point is, let us not celebrate it too early, because
No, we're not celebrating.
no, as you said that we'll be
We are
celebrating
only,
it.
we are only expressing reality, sir. We are just
Point-
saying that we've taught them a lesson.
No, my point is that maybe there has been disengagement in Galwan, but there are still 3 points, 3 areas where the face-off still continues, eyeball to eyeball situation. So
They will
that
have
still
to
remains.
withdraw. There is no question, sir. They have done it in one area. I don't know what transpired in the talks between our national security advisor and the Chinese foreign minister, but our national security advisor is an outstanding intelligence officer, probably one of the best in the universe. And whatever he has discussed would have been keeping India's comprehensive interests in mind. That's why the Chinese are backing off. They realize after what they saw, these 20 brave boys led by a Colonel did, they cannot mess around with the Indian army. Sir, they have 22 conflicts going on in the South China Sea, East China Sea, Sea of Japan, whatever. I mean, they had an issue with Philippines. The Philippines and China both went to the Permanent Court of Arbitration that ruled in favor of the Philippines. The Chinese turned around and said, well, happy birthday, we don't respect the judgment of a UN agency. How do you trust people like this? When they lose, they don't want to honor the commitment. If they had won, they would have gone to town saying, Philippines, get out of it. They have problems with everybody. They construct an imaginary 9-dash line. What does the South China Sea mean? So it belongs to China? Well, thank you. Then the Indian Ocean belongs to me, sir. Give me a break. Let's have a heart. The Chinese lie through their teeth, and the truth was spoken by their Prime Minister that we are hollow. Sir, हमको इस देश को अंदर से कीमत चाट गई है. He talked of corruption. He talked of the bureaucracy. He talked of meaningless gestures. He talked of people becoming hedonists, indulging in all kinds of pleasures. I mean, that's the Chinese Prime Minister, the number 2 guy, telling his people, telling his leadership, telling his second-rank chaps that better shape up, otherwise we are in deep trouble. And today, Western Europe, the Western countries don't like what they've done in Hong Kong. ASEAN doesn't like what they're doing in the seas across their eastern coast. We don't like what they've done on the border. Dost kaun hai uska, sir? Even Pakistan is not plunging in. They want to fight India to the last Pakistani. But I think the Pakistanis have learned that the Chinese will not stand by them. They might stand by the Chinese and lick their whatever.
Pakistan actually wants China to fight their war. That's a different thing.
You're absolutely right. And the Chinese want the Pakistanis to fight with India and distract our attention. No, sir. It's not going to happen, sir. This is not the India of the 60s. This is the India of 2020, a self-confident part. So may I just refer, you talked about whether the Chinese withdrawal. Sir, you've seen the visit made by the Prime Minister today. You've covered it, sir. I have been there many times. The night before I have to fly, I take a medicine to reduce my body's requirement for oxygen. Otherwise, it can become very difficult. And then when we land there, we are told 24 hours, don't move, just relax. Here is the Prime Minister of India in his late 60s. He gets off the chopper and like a teenager, he's running around meeting the troops, he's going to the hospital, he's talking to the civil leadership, he's talking to the military leadership. I mean, what is the message we are giving? That India is united to a man. Forget what the political parties say.
Correct.
India is united to every citizen of this country is behind the Prime Minister when he says that मैं इस धरती माँ का सर झुकने नहीं दूंगा. The Chinese speak Hindi, sir. At least some of them do, and they have understood very clearly
I know that.
So I will not call this a disengagement, sir. Well, for diplomatic finesse and to give them an opportunity to save face, we might say, okay, disengagement or disentanglement or mutually agreed steps to reduce tension. The fact is, it is a withdrawal, sir. They came in छाती फुला के और भीगी चूहे की तरह वापस जा रहे हैं, and they do the same in the other 3 points. Take it from me, sir. It's not I'll withdraw from here, but I'll stay there. No, it will be a comprehensive withdrawal by the Chinese army. They don't have the will or the wherewithal to fight India.
Okay, Ambassador Vora, you said that Pakistan lies through its teeth, and we know it how deceptive they are. Now, I would actually highlight one point that the Chinese transgression or this bloody face-off happened in a year in which India and China were to celebrate 70th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations. So, in that year, they are, stabbing India, So what does it
under the
highlight?
Chinese system, I agree with you entirely. Under the Chinese system of determining the years, 2020 is the year of the rat. And that's how they have been behaving with us, like rats they've been behaving. When we were to celebrate 70 years, sir, you remember the time of Indi-Chini-Bhai-Bhai. You remember the time that our leadership argued in the United Nations why China should be a member. And finally, in 1971, the Chinese were admitted. In Taiwan, the Republic of China was kicked out, which I personally believe was a grave mistake. 74, Deng Xiaoping made this famous speech in the US, which, by the way, you can't find on any Chinese website, where he said if China becomes aggressive, China becomes expansionist, China becomes a bully, then the rest of the world should combine with the people of China, throw out the Communist Party. Now, this was his fear even in 1974, and they've gone totally against what he said, unless he was trying to deceive the whole world, which, again, it's open to interpretation. But yes, 70 years should have been a time for celebration. We still value the feelings of the people of China. What do they want, sir? They want, like the people of India, like you and I and anybody, the people of Russia, the people of United States, of Canada, of Brazil, of France. You want peace, you want prosperity, you want your own home, you want to live your life in relative comfort. What have the Chinese given them? Their own people. Repression, repression, repression. Sir, I have a book here which I would recommend that all those who are watching this program, I don't know if you can see it, but if you can, the title of the book is Why Nations Fail. And I would urge those who are Why Nations. Can you see it, sir?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and it's by Daron Acemoglu, he's a Turk, and James Robinson in America, published about 10, 12 years ago. It says any nation in the world fails for three reasons. Number one, when there is repression. Number two, when there is no social justice. And number three, when the people don't have an outlet to express themselves. That equals a time bomb. China is a ticking time bomb. That is why they have
so as you said that China did it in 62 and China did it again in 2020. So now comes in this backdrop, I mean, there is a question mark on trust. Now what happens after you are a diplomat, seasoned diplomat? We have signed so many agreements or maybe MOUs, understandings, 93, 2005, 96 also, 2013 also. So after this, now what? New approach, what happens to those agreements? You can't trust those agreements now.
You don't trust those agreements at all. Now it will have to be the situation on the ground. And once we come to a ground situation, we will have to hold it without agreement. Because internationally, sir, with the isolation of China, for the next 100 years, they are not going to attempt to mess around with a country like India, not even with their the other nations, the smaller nations with whom they have disputes, maritime disputes. This is very clear. And I believe their idea of dominating the world has been set back by 1,000 years. Sir, aapko yaad hoga, the Chinese had floated 10, 12 years ago this idea of G2, telling the Americans, half the world is yours, half the world is mine. I mean, hello, where do you come from? What kind of period of history are you looking at? 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago? This is the 21st century. What do you mean divide the world into spheres of influence? That didn't even happen during the time of the USA and the USSR. There was a non-aligned movement. What is the lesson of history for the Chinese? I repeat, sir, for them, there is no lesson of history. I think they are very poor students. They kept saying in 1962, we've taught India a lesson. Of course you did. And we learnt it very well. Now the pupil is smarter than the teacher.
So it will be like an LOC now, maybe open. I mean, you have to be on the guard always, isn't it? LOC
Always,
will be like.
absolutely. You can't trust these people. You can't trust the Pakistanis. Sir, this is the curse of geography, as Kaplan has talked about for India. On one side, you have a nation that claims to be the defender of Islam. It claims to be the protector of Pakistan's ideology. On the other side, you have a communist dictatorship that no one in the world likes. And the defender of Islam, when there are 1 million Uyghurs in re-education camps, says, oh, sorry, that's an internal affair of China. But when something happens to the Rohingyas, everybody rises, all these tribes to protest. I mean, this is something which is there. I'm not saying something that is secret. Yeah. When Salman Rushdie writes the satanic verses, there are fatwas for his head. All kinds. When that Danish paper, sir, I forget the name, when they published some cartoons of His Holiness the Prophet Rasul Wasallam, there was, bombing and all kinds of things. The same thing happened with Charlie Hebdo in France. Why are you quiet then on the Uyghurs? Why aren't there fatwas against the Chinese leadership? Because they are scared, they are frightened. So it becomes very selective, even this approach. It's also going to damage the OIC, sir, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They did not open their mouth while the Uyghurs, the Muslim Uyghurs, were being eliminated, if I may use the word. And sir, 10, 15 years later, they are going to use the word genocide. I don't know if anybody uses it now, but...
Sir, we are running out of time. It's always pleasure to talk to you. We would like to talk to you for some more time. But sorry, we are running out of time. Thank you so much for participating in this debate. This is all in the agenda today. Thanks for watching. I will be back with another interesting topic tomorrow. Till then, goodbye.